Do Christians have a good reason for their faith? Well, of course not. Don't be silly. But you'd be surprised just how many are convinced, for no good reason, that they do. And we're going to visit one of those today. Don't expect to be impressed. These people have some serious problems. Let's look in at Tim over at Red Pen Logic, one of the most misnamed religious channels out there. Tim thinks that he has evidence, and that's what his faith is based on. And I'm calling BS. I'm sure we're going to get into the hows and the whys of it all, but this is one of the reasons, one of many, many, many reasons why we just don't take the religious seriously. Because they don't know what words mean. So let's get to it.
It honestly never stops being hilarious when religious people all of a sudden start asking for evidence.
It's true. Because going by what's on screen, I'll tell you exactly what's wrong with it. Firstly, though, Mary's age, that's just church tradition, just like most of the things that Christians believe. There is no reason to think that Mary existed at all, or that Jesus existed at all, or that any of the magical nonsense in the Bible ever happened. That's where the religious go so entirely wrong. It shouldn't be, prove my heartfelt belief is wrong and I'll stop believing. It's, you shouldn't believe this in the first place until those claims have been externally validated. It is never going to be about proving you wrong. It has to be about you proving yourself right. And of course, these people don't care, do they? They just really want to believe.
If there were any evidence of Mary's existence at all, your religion wouldn't be a religion. It would just be historical fact.
So she gets it too. And keep in mind, I haven't seen any of this video before I'm writing the script. I just watch some and then I respond to it, and then I watch a little bit more and I respond to that. Yada, yada, yada. That's how I work. So far, I guess so good. Although I'm sure Tim won't think so because Tim isn't really that smart, is he? So let's see where this goes.
Christianity is completely faith-based. Evidence is the antithesis of faith. If you, sir, could provide me evidence of Mary's existence, I'd join Christianity.
I don't think I'd go that far, but it would certainly help. In fact, I just made a very similar point to a Christian who did what I figure Tim is going to do. Oh, but I have evidence. Okay, present it. Not your faith, not your beliefs, not the crap it says in your stupid book. Something that you can objectively validate with verifiable evidence that anyone can see. Go ahead and do that. It's amazing just how quickly these people run away or make excuses for why they forgot they've got something else to do. They don't have a coherent answer to that challenge, and they just don't care. They just want to believe, but wanting to believe isn't good enough.
This video is captioned, "You either have evidence or you have faith. You cannot have both."
Well, you can, but if you have evidence, you don't need faith, which I figure is the whole point. I'm not going to try and put words into her mouth, but had I said any of that, that's what I would have meant by it. I can't go back and ask because, of course, Tim doesn't include external links to the original sources, which I figure is kind of scummy if you think about it, but that's what I would have done. Everyone ought to point back to the original videos, articles, etc., if for no other reason than to allow people to make sure that they are responding in good faith. That's what I've done since day one. You know, that you're not taking things out of context. I mean, Tim would never do anything like that, would he? Nah.
On this view, faith and evidence are opposites. As the creator of the video says, evidence is the antithesis of faith. Now, if you want to critique a view, you should critique the view itself, not some distortion of the view. Otherwise, you're just creating a straw man.
No, not really. You have to remember that the definition of faith given in the Bible in Hebrews 11:1 is that faith is what you want to be true. It is absolutely the antithesis of evidence. It is believing in things unseen. Read your own damn book. It's amazing just how many of these people don't even know the contents of their own magical book of fiction. Nowhere in the Bible does it ever say not to believe a thing that you haven't personally verified to be true first. If it did, well, I wouldn't say. But when you have a book saying specifically not to care about the evidence, not to give a crap if the things in your head actually represent factual reality, yeah, I figure Tim is going to have some problems. But let's see.
This content creator is welcome to make up her own definition of faith if she likes, have at it. But she isn't welcome to make up what the biblical authors mean when they use the word. The idea that evidence is the antithesis of faith is not a Christian concept. In fact, biblically informed Christians define faith as something like trusting in what you have good reason to believe is true.
But that doesn't come out of the Bible, does it? Want to read it for yourself? Go right ahead. Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is not how evidence works. Again, let's go look at the definition for that. Evidence is the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. It is not, well, it just sounds good to me, which is exactly what Christianity is about. Tim might not like that fact, but we've got him and his other religious cronies dead to rights.
And where would a biblically informed Christian get such an idea? I'm glad you asked. This is what the Bible teaches. Go ahead, read it for yourself. I'll wait. Here's one example. In John chapter 20, the Apostle John tells us why he wrote his gospel. He says, "Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name."
But that doesn't mean anything. That's just a book says a thing. That doesn't make that thing true. He is not talking about evidence. He's talking about blind faith. If it were evidence, then there would be some way to independently corroborate that any of that stuff ever happened. Saying, this stuff is really, really true, that doesn't prove that it's true. That's kind of the point. It's like if J.K. Rowling wrote in the front of the Harry Potter books, everything in here is real. I'm just telling the stories so that you know that there really is a Hogwarts and that he who shall not be named, he's out to get you. Saying, well, you just got to believe me, that doesn't qualify as evidence. You've got to do a whole lot better than that.
John's purpose in writing down the signs he witnessed was to provide his readers with evidence so they would believe.
Well, that's your belief, not fact, not evidence, belief. You don't seem to understand the difference. You accept what you've read into John because you want to get to the same conclusion that he did, whoever the hell wrote John, something that is emotionally comforting to you and other Christians. But that doesn't make it true, because the purpose of evidence, as described above, is to verify that claims, such as those that appear in the Bible, are actually true, that actually happened beyond the claims that are made about them. The claims themselves, they don't matter. It's the validation of those claims that do. And sorry for Tim, but the Bible really doesn't have any, at least not for anything supernatural. This is why he and every other apologist out there is so utterly ludicrous. He's just pushing an emotionally comforting narrative that just happens to appeal to him, not intellectually because there's no intelligence in this at all, but because of his fee-fees. and that is not impressive.
Now be honest. Does this sound like John wants us to believe without evidence? Does this sound like John thinks evidence is the antithesis of faith? Of course not.
Who cares? I don't care what anyone wants. I care what they can prove, and that requires independent, verifiable evidence. Again, we don't even know who the hell wrote John. It is completely anonymous. How can we trust that he ever saw anything at all? Because he said so? Con men have been doing that forever. Well, of course you can trust me. Why? Why in the world would I do that? You haven't proven your case. But then again, I'm not as gullible as Tim is, so, yeah, I guess there is that.
Now, someone may assess the evidence and find it wanting. Fair enough. But that doesn't change the nature of biblical faith.
What evidence? Point to it. Talking about it doesn't mean anything. Trot it out here. Because nothing that he's described so far can credibly be called evidence. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't make any of it worthwhile. That is why we're really clear on what we mean by evidence. We don't mean interpretations. We don't mean claims. We sure the hell don't mean faith. We mean something that everyone can see and verify on their own without any regard for what your internal brain state might be. No faith required. And that's something that he just doesn't have. It's something that he isn't remotely interested in. It's why people like Tim fail so often, except for among the terminally gullible. They aren't on the same rational plane with the rest of us.
So this video gets faith wrong. Faith isn't believing in spite of the evidence, but rather believing in light of the evidence. Is what you do in response to the evidence.
Except it's not. Now, I get that he thinks that it is. Lots of Christians do. Lots of Christians, and to be fair, this goes for almost all religions, but they've bought into the marketing bit that says that they have evidence and that's why they believe. However, they don't actually have any evidence. They have claims. Lots and lots and lots of claims. Okay, I get that you have claims, but I want you to walk me through your support. Produce the evidence that you claim that you have beyond the claims. And that's where they always run into trouble. It's where, well, how do you know that comes in so useful? It's the way to keep them honest. Well, Jesus rose from the dead. How do you know that? Where is your corroboratory evidence? I don't care what it says in the Bible because you haven't proven that the Bible is factually correct. Oh, they'll complain about that a lot, but just point out that they don't take the claims in the Quran or the Vedas seriously, so why do they think that their silly book gets special dispensation? Half the time, that'll send them into the hills, screaming childish insults behind them. Their faith isn't evidence of anything but their own gullibility. And they need to do a whole lot better than that.
An analogy might help. Imagine you're standing at the edge of Niagara Falls, and while you're watching this magnificent waterfall, you notice a tightrope walker walking from one side to the other, pushing a wheelbarrow full of rocks.
Now, I have no idea if I'm just losing my mind. I mean, watching this crap all day, that might do it to you. But I swear that I've heard that story before. I couldn't tell you where, but I know I've heard some Christian apologist use that exact story in the past. In fact, I had to stop this video and verify that this wasn't something that was really old that I'd done before. Nope, it was just published 3 weeks ago. Now that doesn't mean it's not an old video that they republished, but nope, that seems to be something new. If anybody else knows who else might have used this before, apologetics being the absurdly incestuous nonsense that it is, please let me know in the comments. Thanks.
You're mesmerized by his amazing ability, so you keep watching him do it over and over again. Let's say he does it 5, 10, 15 times in a row. Now imagine he sees you watching him and he comes over to you and asks, "Do you have faith that I could do it again?" And you say, "Sure, I've seen you do it all day."
Except I don't have to have faith. I have experience. I have a verifiable demonstration that this guy is real and that he is capable of performing the feat. Faith would be entirely misplaced here because, as we all know, crap happens. He could go up there and fall off. There is no reason whatsoever that I should have faith in him as described. But I do have a good reason to think that he is at least capable because I've seen him do it before. And that is really the difference between faith, as described in the Bible, and well-evidenced confidence. I have seen him do this thing. I know that it is possible for him to do this thing. Whether or not he can do it again, that might be another matter, but I can demonstrate that it is possible for him to do it because he already has. I have evidence. I don't need faith.
Then he dumps the rocks out and says, "Okay, climb in." Do you get it? You believe based on the evidence, seeing him do it 15 times in a row, but it's not mere belief or assent. Stepping into the wheelbarrow is an act of trust.
No, because it changes the scenario. You've seen him do it with rocks. You've never seen him do it with a moving load. That is something entirely different. For that, you need an entirely different set of evidential experiences. Now, whether you choose to climb in or not, that's completely up to you. You might think that he can do it and be willing to put your life on the line to prove it. But that's not really what I figure he's going to get to. Because I don't have to have faith that this guy is real. I don't have to have faith that he has a wheelbarrow. I don't have to have faith that he's capable of walking the tightrope. Whether he can do it with me inside, that's a different matter entirely, but there are all kinds of verifiable elements that I don't need faith in at all. Now, translate that to your imaginary friend. Nobody has ever validated any of it. Belief is not independent corroboration. It's just not. It's like saying, get in the wheelbarrow and a ghost is going to push you across to the other side. Well, nobody's ever established that there are any ghosts, much less that they are capable of pushing the wheelbarrow. I'm sure the hell not getting inside for that. That's just insanity.
So think of biblical faith like active trust or commitment based on evidence. Unfortunately, many people, including some Christians, don't understand biblical faith. Sadly, there are many who will blindly believe this video without looking into what Christianity actually teaches. Ironically, this concept of faith is just asserted without any evidence. In other words, she expects us to accept her understanding on blind faith. Don't take the bait.
Except you haven't demonstrated any of that supposed evidence, have you? It's just an empty claim. Saying, well, I've got evidence means nothing until you trot that evidence out. I mean, going back to the whole ghost thing, since it's there, you can't say, well, you saw this guy walking the tightrope, therefore you have evidence that a ghost could do it. No, I don't. That's not how it works. You'd have to see the ghost do it to have evidence that the ghost could do it. Just like I'd need to see his God to have evidence that his God is real. When do you think we're going to get to see that? Because once you have that, once you have the experience, once you have the evidence, the faith is entirely pointless. You don't need faith. You have evidence. So go ahead and show me the same kind of evidence that you've just described. You can't. So this is all just a bunch of empty nonsense based on wishful thinking that absolutely does not understand what the Bible says, as if he cares. This is delusion, pure and simple. He thinks that he knows something that he clearly doesn't know. Belief and knowledge are not the same thing. Claiming a thing that you really like, that doesn't make it true. it doesn't make it evidence. It sure the hell doesn't make it knowledge. It just proves that Tim is a delusional imbecile. And I think we could have all seen that one coming.